Alright, so today we're going to do watercolor some bookmarks. I've got 4 here and another 4 for you to choose from. So you can pick any of the 4 that you want for your own bookmark painting. I'm going to start with this one, and then I'll end with the other one. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is we got to divide our paper into the 4 sections. I used a ruler. I put a mark every 3 inches at the top and the bottom, connect those dots with lines, and then I set masking tape on those lines, and then masking tape around the sides. That's going to create that nice border around your pictures. Okay. You're going to need a few things. You're going to need a cup of water. You're going to need your paints. You got your 2 brushes, the flat and the round. I used a fine point Sharpie, this kind of Sharpie, and I tried using an ultrafine, and I don't know if it was my ultrafine wasn't working very well, or if it was the paper and the Sharpie, but they didn't get along, so I ended up stopped not using that one and went with a gel pen for some of the line work. You can do most of the line work with your round brush, but I found that a pen works just as well and is a little less frustrating. Okay, so I'm going to work this way because I'm left-handed, but you're welcome to work in whichever order you want to do, and put them in any order because you'll cut them out when you're done. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my section wet. This is a wet on wet technique, so the paper has to be wet. I'm using my flat brush, and I'm just dipping it in my water and spreading that water around. If you don't do this, you don't put the water on there, the watercolors don't want to spread around and blend. They just kind of want to sit in one place. So I'm gonna grab some blue, and you've got 2 different blues, and you're welcome to use either one. I'm using the darker of the blues. And I'm just gonna, you can see that shot. You can see the color is softer, and it sort of flows into itself. Um, and then I'm gonna grab some of my green. You got 2 different greens, so you can pick either of the 2 greens. With watercolors, you have to work in stages, so we're going to work this, and then we're going to let it dry. So we'll stop, and then we'll come back to it when it dries. So just put some green and some blue, and if you want to get some of that mixing, while they're still wet, you just kind of dance around on the edge. And we're just going to let that dry. While it's drying, we're going to move over to the next one. So as you can see, I got that, and then I'm gonna move over to this one. It's the same idea, but this time I'm not going to use the wet on wet. I'm going to use the dry brush technique. I've got my red, and you might see the difference. You might be able to see the subtle differences, the way the paint. So you get these nice brush strokes. You can see the paper through it. Of course, you can make that all go away by putting a little extra water on there. A lot of these backgrounds remind me of abstract expressionist paintings, uh, color field paintings, big giant canvases covered with blue or red, smears of green. But they're fun for a background, so we're going to use those background. This is some orange now. I've noticed that if you're not using the wet on wet technique, you're using this dry brush technique, you're not going to get nearly as much blending unless your paper your brush is really wet. So you can get in there and get just a little mark of orange and not it won't dissolve and blend into the red. If you like that, you're welcome to use that. If you don't like it, you want it to blend, then just add a little more water. So I'm going to come back and grab a little bit more of my red and come up here in this corner, mostly just because I want to, no particular reason. A little bit more red here. Okay, so that one's done for now. Gotta let it dry. See? Okay, so next I'm gonna do this blue and purple one, but there's a little secret. It's actually blue and pink. The pink and the blue mix together and make a purple. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this lighter blue this time. Get some of that here and there. I don't think you can see this, but just off to my left, there is a cat that is very curious about what we are doing right now. Her name is Wendy, and she is up for adoption if you're interested. We started fostering with TLC Fosters over the summer, and now I have cats in my house. So I've got some blue, and now I'm going to grab my pink. And when the pink touches the blue, you'll get some moments of purple or lavender. And if you like that, you can always just grab a little more blue and force the two together, creating this nice purple. I'll grab a little more of my pink. I think I'm going to grab some of that darker blue, just a little bit of it. Okay, so I think that one looks good too. Okay, so here's what's really interesting. These first three are just backgrounds. So if you like the mandala, but you don't like the blue and purple, or the blue and pink, you can draw the mandala over on the orange and red. Or if you want to do the leaves, you can do the leaves over here. So it's totally up to you which design. If you like that design but you don't like that color background, you can do that. Okay. For the sunset, I'm gonna there's a particular few techniques that we're gonna use. So that one's kind of locked in on the design, but the colors you can change. I'm gonna use purples and pinks. So I'm gonna start by getting my paper wet. And then I'm going to start with some purple at the top. It's not feeling as purple as I want it to, so I'm going to add just a little bit of blue to it. I've got a shine on there so you can't really see what's going on. I'll have to move that light in a minute. I'm going to grab a little bit more of my pink. I'm going to come down here into the all right. So I got that light moved and keep pulling that pink down the paper. The more water you add, the lighter the pink's going to get. So if you want it to go all the way to white as you get to the bottom, you can do that, or you can have it go solid pink all the way to the bottom. That is kind of up to you. Okay, so we've got the layout, the background for each of our papers. So you can let this just sit and dry. Get up, go do something else, come back and work on it. A second trick that you can use is if you happen to have a hair dryer, you can just use the hair dryer and dry it off. It'll dry a lot faster. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to push pause so you don't have to hear my hair dryer. All right, so in our sunset picture, we're going to use the white and we're going to add some stars. The trick with this is to get the white pretty wet so that it becomes a little more like a paste and a little less like a cake, which it is right now. Okay, so I got this little puddle forming, and I'm just going to touch those wherever I want stars. they're going to be super hard to see on the screen. I apologize for that. I found with the white, it actually, you got to wait for it to dry before it really shows up. So I'm just going to throw a few more stars on here, and then we're going to work with our marker or pen on on our leaves over here. Okay, so I used a gel pen, but a marker, you can make them thicker if you want. It's totally up to you. Start by drawing a line. Make it as long as you want. Make a leafy. I always think of these as green beans. They look like green beans to me. Another cat paw. And I'm just going back and forth. Do not stress on the shape of them. You're just thinking green beans. Okay. And now we're going to draw another one. I'm going to make a small one here. I'll make a big one. I've found that these work best if they are symmetrical, but don't be like over rigid on yourself to make them extremely symmetrical. Like that one's not exactly the same. We can have one coming down from above. If you want, you can, since we're done painting on this one, you can remove the tape and then you can twist and turn the paper any way you want. I'm limited a little bit because of the camera, but I could if I really wanted to do that. Another trick is if you remove the tape, you can draw onto that white border. You could have your leaves go off into this white border. Okay, so that's that one. For my next one, we're going to draw some flowers, and I'm gonna keep going with my gel pen. I used the fine point Sharpie last time. I didn't like it; it was a little too thick, so I'm gonna use the gel pen this time. Basically, just drawing the stem and then the tops. I'm thinking you when I'm making these. And then I'll put a little ball on top. They can be pretty close. You can have as many as you want. In fact, I'm going to go back and add one more in there. You can have it look like you have one off the paper. It's just kind of poking in, saying hello. There's another one over here. I think I might have one more. Okay. You want to go back and thicken that up a little bit, you can. Okay, so just after we finished the last two, or the first two, I should say, the first two bookmarks, something went wrong with the camera, and all of the last two bookmarks didn't get recorded. So I didn't know it. So I decided I was going to finish those for you here. I got two new setups for us. I'm going to zero in on these sections so you can see them, and hopefully we'll be able to do this right this time. So I'm going to use my gel pen again. I need to find somewhere close to middle, and then I'm going to draw a half circle and fill it in, and then around that I'm going to draw another circle. If you got a compass, you want to use a compass, you're welcome to do so. You don't have to unless you want to. And then on top of that, I'm going to draw a bunch of little circles. And then above each of those, I'm going to draw sort of a teardrop shape. I'm told that a mandala is representational of the different parts of your life. Each layer represents a new stage in your journey through life. That's what they believe, those folks who make them. I just think they're pretty. Okay, so we've got some teardrop shapes. Go ahead and add two half ones there. And then we're going to make some arches above each of the teardrops. Next, we're going to draw some dots inside each of those. Then we're going to make another arch above each of the ones we just did. And then above those, we're going to make kind of a cone shape or an upside down V, whichever way you want to think of that. And you always want to try and have your points going away from that center so it radiates out. And then in the spaces in between, we're going to draw 3 lines. Okay, so then on this, now we should have kind of a half circle shape happening, and then above that, we are going to draw another teardrop shape. Half one over there. Again, each one should kind of try and point away from that center. And inside each of those, we're going to put, I don't know, it reminds me of like a fountain, you know. And then finally, oh, I forgot one right there. And then finally, we're going to draw just like a line around the outside. When I am teaching my high school kids, my junior high kids, I always think of this as a halo. Just sort of goes around the outside, doesn't actually touch it. That's what I tell them. All right, so now that is your mandala. You're welcome to add more details around the outside if you want, or you could just leave it the way it is. I think it looks really nice the way it is. Okay, and so the final step we have over here with our sunset picture, I'm going to start with my fine point Sharpie, and I'm going to make 2 telephone poles. Okay, so I've got 1 and 2. I'm trying to make vertical-ish lines. They don't have to be perfectly vertical. And then I'm going to put a really longer and then a shorter line, a longer and a shorter. And then I'm going to switch out my Sharpie with my pen again. I Got a little cross beam there, a little support beam there, and I've got 3 lines, telephone lines. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to draw a couple 3 birds, and really it's just an oval with a circle on top, a little beak, and a tail. An oval, a circle, a beak, and a tail. An oval, a circle, a beak, and a tail. This one's pointing a different direction. And then maybe one more up here. You can put them anywhere you want, obviously. It's your picture. All right, so that is those last 2 sections. Okay, so these are the bookmarks that we're gonna make. Again, I'm gonna start with the one on the left and work my way to the right. I will tell you that this first one, this one here, it's gonna have to work in stages. We're gonna have to let it dry some because it does definitely need that. So here we go. So we're gonna add some water to our section. We're using that wet on wet technique. Okay, I'm gonna grab my tray here. Get just a little bit of red, water. Definitely need that water. Okay, so this is definitely gonna be like a background, so don't feel like we need to do anything specific with it. I'm gonna throw some blue on there. Notice I'm always hitting that water every time so that my watercolors are nice and diluted. So we're gonna let that dry. And then we're gonna do this second one. We're gonna do a dry brush technique. I'm gonna use my orange. Still needs water, but we're gonna get some brush strokes happening in there. If you'd rather not use orange, you want to use a different color, that's fine. This is really just all about that fun little saying. And I've actually got a different saying that I'm going to do for this one. That first one, it says just one more chapter. I've got a different saying I'm going to do for this video. Okay, and then I'm going to grab some pink, throw some pink on there. So you're welcome to do the just one more chapter. And some of you might be those kind of readers. Just one more chapter. But I am more. I wish I was a one more chapter reader. I'm more of this other phrase that we're going to use. So I've got some pink. And I've got some orange. Let those play with each other. Okay. So the next section is going to look like a rainbow, a spectrum. I love painting the spectrum, that full color spectrum happening. We're going to start with red, and then we're going to transfer right to the orange. And then we're going to go to yellow, and you might want to make sure these are each color, each are wet before you try and paint with them. So I got the yellow, and then I'm going to go to green. And then blue, depending on which ones are still wet for you. And then finally, we'll hit the bottom with purple. Now each of these sections need to dry before we can add anything to them. And our final section, believe it or not, is a full-on traditional watercolor painting. We're going to make a landscape, and we need the sky. We use dry brush technique. Don't be afraid to leave those brush strokes in place. Just let that look very brushed. We want it to look lighter toward the bottom. You can stop anywhere, any way you want. Okay. If you feel like you need to, you can grab some white and put some of that on there, but that's totally up to you. And then we need to let this all dry, and I'm going to use my handy dandy hair dryer. So I'm going to push pause, and then I'm going to dry with it, and then I'll start it back up. Okay, so I've let that dry, and I'm going to go ahead and finish this traditional watercolor section. I'm going to grab a little bit of green, and I'm going to start at the bottom with that green. And I'm going to grab both greens, and I'm going to just throw some green on there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of black. And I want that black and green to kind of play with each other to create this sort of almost impressionistic landscape. The idea is to make this dark back here and get lighter as I come down toward me. Add a little bit more green in there. There's really no wrong way to do this.
Okay, but I gotta let that dry, and I'm gonna let that dry kind of traditionally. While it's drying, I'm gonna jump back over here to my up house sort of idea, and I'm gonna grab some of my red, and I'm gonna make some red ovals. I think I'm gonna transition back to my round brush. I really like the idea and the way it makes the balloon shape. So I'm just gonna make a few ovals. There's no wrong way to do this, and there's no wrong place to put them. I tend to make them in the sections that are already red, but if you choose to make them in the blue section, you see how that it looks just a little darker, and that's perfectly fine. Just be aware that it's going to be darker in that section. Okay, so I've added 6 red balloons, and now I'm going to make I'll go for 6 blue balloons. Trying not to get them to touch right now. I don't want them to touch because they will not play well with each other. They'll blend together, making purple, but also making blobs. So 2, 4, 5. I'll go ahead and add one more down here. And since I have a few more spaces, I'm going to grab some purple and put some purple balloons. If you want to add other colors besides red, blue, and purple, you're welcome to do so. I do want to make clear that if you put, say, yellow on top of a red background, you're probably going to get something that looks very orange. If you don't want that, then you might want to be aware of it before you do it. Okay. I think I'm going to see. I got 2, 4, 5. Yep, I'm going to add one more here. And then we're going to move over and do something else. Just a second. Okay, so the next section here, like I said, I had just one more chapter, and that's definitely my wife. She's always wanting to read just one more chapter, just one more chapter. But for me, the phrase usually is more like, you fell asleep here. So I'm going to use my pen, and I'm going to use some nice script, and I'm going to write and then I can go back in there and make it a little more like calligraphy by adding some accentuations to each of the letters. You're more than welcome to use any kind of font or anything that you want. I don't think my handwriting is terrible, so I'm just going to use my own handwriting, just to add a little flair to it. I have that one. I'm still waiting on my balloons to dry, and while I'm waiting on that to dry, I'm going to add a little bit of something to here. So I'm going to use my fine point Sharpie. I'm going to go around the edges first. Right up against that tape. All right, so the idea here is we're going to kind of make this look a little bit like stained glass. And the trick I do is I start with a line that runs from one side to the other on a diagonal, and then off of that I draw another one up and down, and then off of that one I just make new ones. You're more than welcome to use your own personal technique on this. You can make them as complicated or as simple as you want if you decide to do this sort of idea. Okay, you can make those lines thicker if you want to, or you can keep them as thin as they are. All right, so now we're going to come back over to our traditional watercolor. We're going to add some trees. We use our black, and we're going to start by drawing a very thin, skinny line, and this is going to be the base of our tree. I'm going to really zoom in on this tree for you. So I've got my skinny line, and then I'm going to add some sort of back and forth sort of lines. And then I'll add another one. The longer the line, the lower the line goes, the closer it's going to be to us, and therefore the bigger it should be. There's really no wrong way to make these trees. So don't feel like stressed on whether or not it looks perfect. Move the camera down so you can see the whole thing. I've added two over on the left side, and then I'm going to add one nice big one up close. And then if you really want to, you can make a tiny little one back there in the distance. Nothing overly difficult about this image. All right, now we're going to go back over to our balloons. It is honestly one of my favorite ones. Okay, so we've got some balloons, but we're going to put one more layer of balloons. I'm going to use my round brush again. I'm going to go back in there with there, and I'm going to do some overlapping. And you should be able to see through the balloons we've already added. Hopefully you let the paint dry enough that you can get mostly translucent or transparent balloons. I'm using a lot of red here, but then now I'm going to grab some blue. Blue tends to be just a little bit more opaque. It's not see-through. Okay, I feel like we maybe got enough. Maybe one more right here. That's enough balloons for us. You can add more if you want. There's no rule that says you can't. Okay, so now we're going to do the house. Now the trick with the house is we're going to use some brown. Get my brown a little wet. And I'm going to draw a very basic square looking shape. And then I also want to add the windows. And the trick with the windows is the windows are actually, we're not going to paint the windows. We're not going to paint in the windows. We're just going to paint around the windows. Okay, so I've got this super basic shape. Now I can zoom in so you can really see what I'm talking about. I've got the windows, a couple windows, and I've got my brown house. And now I'm going to grab just a little bit of black, and I'm going to put some brown in there too. And I'm going to make this triangle shape up above. Extremely simple looking house. Okay. And then I'm gonna add the chimney. You got to be careful with the chimney because your roof is wet, and if you're adding too much brown, your roof will not. The two will blend together. So you just got to be careful. Okay. So now I'm going to use my hair dryer again on this, or you can just let it dry on your own, and then we'll finish it up. So give me a second. I'm going to push pause. All right, so I've used my hair dryer. Everything's dry now, and I can use my Sharpie or my pen. It doesn't really matter to add my accentuations to my house. So I think on my previous picture, I used my Sharpie. It looks very cartoony, and if you like that, you're totally welcome to do that. I think this time I'm going to go with the pen, which is going to outline it, but not overly accentuate the shape of it. I'm going to outline my windows. I'm going to add a little door, a little doorknob, outline the roof, add my chimney. You can add more details to that if you want or not. And then I'm going to outline my balloons. I'm adding just the tiniest little shape underneath, and then I'm going to have a string coming down to the chimney. I'll even zoom in so you can see that proper. As you add the strings for the balloons, you can have them going behind each other. They can always go in front of, because some balloons would begin in the front. It's all about overlapping. camera so you can see the whole thing. Just about done. Got just a couple more to go. All right, so I got one more thing that I forgot to add, and that was just a little bit of green at the bottom to sort of show the ground. All right, so it looks like I have all my bookmarks finished. Last step, of course, is to remove the masking tape. Again, I have to stress that we are very careful with it, pulling away from on a perpendicular angle so that it doesn't tear. All right, so there we have this set and the set we made before. You're welcome to make any of those four. I hope you have enjoyed painting these bookmarks. Of course, the last step would be to cut them out and then share them or keep them all for yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this series. It's been an awesome time with you. If you want, you could send me a photo of your of the bookmarks that you made. I'd love to see them. You can just add them to the comments on my YouTube channel. Thank you so very much.